There's one moment in my life that permanently split everything into a before and an after. No matter how hard I try, I can't reason my way out of what I saw. And trust me, I've spent years trying. I used to be one of those people who rolled their eyes at anything unexplained. If you couldn't prove it, it wasn't real. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. At the time, I was spending a Saturday night at my boyfriend's family home, a sprawling property way out in the countryside, the kind of place where the nearest neighbor might as well be on another planet. His parents were away for the weekend, and it was just the two of us surrounded by nothing but open fields and dark sky. The night started perfectly. A home-cooked dinner, a good bottle of wine, a card game we loved playing together. For hours, we laughed and forgot the world existed. Around 1 a.m, we moved to the couch and threw on a movie. We were both exhausted, and we drifted off without even realizing it. That's when it started. We were ripped awake by a sound so violent and low that I felt it inside my chest before I even processed what I was hearing. It was somewhere between a foghorn and something I don't have words for, deep, resonant, and absolutely deafening. The glasses in the china cabinet rattled. The floor vibrated beneath us. We both had our hands pressed against our ears before we'd even fully opened our eyes. And then, silence. Just like that, it stopped. We sat there for a moment, just staring at each other, hearts pounding. We couldn't think of a single rational explanation. There were no trains, no highways, nothing near that house. My boyfriend got up and turned off the TV. We moved to the large bay window overlooking the back field and scanned the darkness. Nothing. Not a single thing out there. We'd barely caught our breath when the backyard exploded in a flash of white light. Not like a camera flash, more like lightning, the kind that lights up everything for a fraction of a second. We rushed back to the window. Again, nothing. That's when he decided to kill all the lights inside, so we could see the yard more clearly. I hated that idea, but I didn't argue. We moved to the kitchen and peered out the side windows into the dark. A moment later, the motion sensor floodlight in the backyard switched on by itself. He went pale. He told me that light was calibrated to ignore small animals. Whatever triggered it had to be large. I thought he might be trying to scare me, but when I looked at his face, I knew he wasn't. And that's when we heard the whispering. Don't go anywhere. In part 2, what was outside that house moves closer, and what happened next left us with no explanation that made any sense. The sound was unlike any language either of us had ever heard. It wasn't exactly talking. It was more like murmuring, layered, strange, almost rhythmic. We stood completely still, straining to listen. My boyfriend pointed slowly toward the side window. Two silhouettes passed by the glass. But the way they moved, that's what burned into my memory. They didn't walk the way a person walks. They swayed. They drifted. It was wrong in a way I couldn't articulate then, and still can't fully describe now. "Call the police," I whispered. He grabbed his phone. No signal. Not even on Wi-Fi, which had never happened in that house before. I checked mine. Same thing. Dead. Both of us, completely cut off. Whatever was outside had made its way around to the kitchen door. We could hear it, something pressing against the handle, testing the lock. I had watched my boyfriend lock that door earlier with my own eyes. I screamed. I don't know why. Instinct took over completely. The sound must have startled them because they stopped trying to open it. But they didn't leave. The shadows were still there, just standing outside the door. And the whispering started again. My boyfriend shouted that he had a gun and that they needed to leave the property. Immediately, it was a bluff, but desperation will do that to a person. Then the sound came back. That same thundering, bone-shaking blast filled the entire house without any warning. We were both screaming with our hands over our ears. When it finally stopped a few seconds later, we looked up. The shadows were gone. Another flash of white light lit up the yard, and our phones buzzed back to life simultaneously, notifications flooding in like nothing had ever happened. Before either of us could even speak, both the side door and the front door blew open at the same time. 2 locked doors. Wide open. Nothing came inside. We called 911. The police arrived and told us there were no footprints anywhere. Not by the doors. Not in the muddy backyard. Not a single trace. The officer left with nothing to offer us. We stayed awake until sunrise, shaking. The worst part? No one ever found an explanation for any of it. Coming up in part 3, a man staying alone at a remote lake house begins witnessing something over the water 3 nights in a row, and each night it gets closer. After a painful breakup, I needed somewhere to disappear and clear my head. My parents owned a small camp house on one of the largest lakes in the region. The kind of lake so wide you can't see the other side. In early spring, the whole area is completely deserted. It was just me and my black lab, and I was genuinely at peace. That lasted about 2 weeks. One night, I tried to let my dog out for his usual evening run. He loves being outside in any weather, rain, snow, it doesn't matter. But that night, he walked to the door, looked out, and started whimpering. Wouldn't budge. I stepped outside myself to coax him. That's when I saw them. Clusters of glowing orbs hovering out over the lake near the horizon, moving in ways that made no physical sense. They weren't drifting on the wind. They were making deliberate, rapid changes in direction. Sharp turns. Sudden stops. Movements that no aircraft or natural phenomenon could account for. My first thought was drones. But the number of lights I was seeing would have required dozens of them operating in perfect coordination. Eventually, they all shot straight up into the sky and vanished. The second they disappeared, my dog trotted outside without a care in the world. The next night, they were back and closer. This time, not all of them left. Several lights remained, hovering motionless above the water, pulsing softly. Then, slowly, deliberately, they began to merge. One by one, the individual orbs drifted together until a single large ball of light hung in the air above the lake. I stood at my back door, unable to move, unable to think. It held its position for what felt like forever, then slipped below the horizon and was gone. I should have left that night. Instead, I stayed for night 3. Part 4 is next, and on the third night, the lights don't stay over the water. By the third night, part of me almost expected them. I positioned myself by the back door well before the time they had appeared on the previous nights. My dog was already uneasy, pressing against my leg. Right on schedule, the lights materialized over the water, not fading in gradually, but popping into existence like someone had flipped a switch. This time they moved differently. No wild, chaotic darting. Instead, they advanced in a slow, deliberate pattern, One would move, and then the others would pause, as if taking turns. It took me a moment to understand what I was watching. They were coming towards shore. As they got closer, I started picking up a faint humming sound, low and mechanical, like the buzz of old fluorescent lighting. The orbs were close enough now that I could see them clearly. Pure, clean, spherical light. Nothing attached. Nothing visible holding them up or powering them. When they reached the dock, I backed inside and shut the glass door. But I kept watching. The moment they crossed into the backyard, everything changed. The controlled movement was gone. They scattered in every direction, ricocheting off the side of the house, flashing through the tree line, one darting down into the water. I dropped to the floor with my dog. I closed my eyes. And then it was quiet. I opened my eyes. The lights were gone. I looked outside. Not a single mark on the house. No burn marks. No broken glass. No sign that anything had just happened there. My dog was calm. Nothing happened on the fourth night, or any night after that for as long as I stayed at the camp. I told a few close friends. One said I was probably dreaming. One said I must have been confused. That's when I stopped talking about it. But I know what I saw over 3 consecutive nights. And I know it was real. The last story may be the hardest to explain of all, because this witness didn't just see something. He came face to face with it. Don't leave. Part 5 is the one that will keep you thinking. A father alone in the woods at night encounters something that shouldn't exist, and wakes up with hours of his life missing. This happened roughly 10 years ago, though I've never fully made peace with it. My family was on a cross-country road trip in an inherited RV. My wife, our 2 kids, and me. We stopped at a campground for a few nights because my son had made a friend, and we didn't want to pull him away too soon. The campsite was expansive. Forests, meadows, mountain ridges, rivers. During the day, it was paradise for the kids. At night, I had a different kind of routine. I was a smoker at the time, and my kids thought I'd quit. So every night, after they fell asleep, I would sneak out alone and take a long walk into the woods to smoke. I'd been doing solo night hikes for most of my adult life. It never bothered me. I knew how to stay oriented, and I never wandered far. A few days into our stay, I had already found my spot, a rocky ledge overlooking a dense stretch of forest, far enough from camp that no one would smell the smoke. I'd been going there every night and sitting for an hour, just thinking. On this particular night, I was deep in thought when I became aware of a sound. It started soft enough that I assumed I was imagining it, but I wasn't. It was a pulsating, rhythmic noise, like a repeated low tone. Not an animal. Not the wind. Nothing that belonged in those woods. I left the ledge and moved toward the sound. It grew louder as I walked deeper into the trees. Then, directly in front of me, it stopped. Everything stopped. Not just the strange noise, but all of it. The wind, the insects, every natural sound the forest had been making just switched off. In the complete silence, something moved behind me. I turned around. About 10 feet away, barely visible in the darkness, was a figure standing upright on 2 legs. Tall, extremely tall. 7 feet at least. It was in a hunched posture, and I could just barely make out 2 large, faintly reflective eyes catching whatever trace of moonlight existed. I took a small step toward it. It flinched. I stood perfectly still. So did it. I took another small step. It shifted into what I can only describe as a ready position, like something about to charge. We held that standoff for what felt like minutes. Then I leaned slightly forward, and it made a sound I have no category for. Sharp, strange, nothing like any living thing I've known, and it moved, not ran. It skittered off into the trees and was gone. No sound of footsteps, no crashing through brush. Just gone. I ran to the spot where it had been standing. Nothing. I stayed in the area for a while longer, hoping it might return. At some point the forest came back to life. Insects, wind, the sounds of the night resuming as if a mute button had been lifted. That's when I walked back to the RV. My wife was furious. She said I'd been gone for several hours. I laughed. It felt like 45 minutes at most. I looked at my phone. She was right. Hours had passed that I had absolutely no memory of. Just before sunrise, sitting outside next to the RV, I heard something pass overhead. A heavy, fast-moving rush of air, like something large flying close, but without the sound of an engine. I looked up. Nothing there. We left the next morning. I kept the story to myself for years because I knew how it sounded. But recently, I've come across other people sharing similar experiences, and it made me finally put this into words. I don't need anyone to believe me. I've long stopped caring about that. I know what was standing in those woods. If these stories have you questioning what's really out there, you're not alone. Drop your own unexplained experiences in the comments. And if you want more stories like these, the next video is already waiting for you.